Now, if we need this labor, we need to house them. So it's not a question of reducing immigration, it's a question of increasing the housing supply. How do we do this?
Have you been thinking about buying your first rental property for some time, or do you already own a bunch of properties? Well, fellow investors, you found the right location to listen and learn from others' successes. Welcome to The Very Real Estate Effect with your host, Axel Monsaingeon.
Hello, and welcome back to the Very Real Estate Effect podcast, a show dedicated to real estate investing right here in Quebec. The end of the year 2024 is basically next week. And today I wanted to take a little bit of time to do somewhat of an economic recap on a lot of the things that have happened this year and how they impacted us as real estate investors. Now, as a disclaimer, I must remind you that I am not an economist. I am not your financial advisor. What I express here is my humble opinion. It is my view, and I do not predict the future. I may have some ideas of what might happen or could happen, should happen, but it's only my opinion. So I just want you to be mindful of that. So never make decisions based on, but Excel said that, okay? I'm just sharing my opinion. Now, it's important to, at the end of the year 2024, again, next week, to take a bit of time to reflect on some of the things that have happened, because 2022 was rather difficult. 2023 was difficult. 2024 saw, a recovery, and 2025, in my view, is going to be a very good year. But let's not forget how far we've come. And so I just kind of wanted to look at all of this, the real estate investment, from the economic point of view, especially at the macroeconomic level, because over the last let's kind of do a bit of a long recap. 2020, COVID hit. It took us until about 2022 to get out of it and start to recover. Now, during this time, we saw a drop in interest rates. The government was trying to protect the economy. They injected a lot of money so that they used their monetary tool. So as you know, the government has two tools. They have the monetary policy and their fiscal policy. So think of it as fiscal policy think of it as taxes, and monetary, think of they can add money in the economy, so they can affect the money supply. And they also have another tool called the interest rate to be able to kind of manipulate and guide the economy. Now, during COVID, everything was done to preserve the economy, and interest rates dropped. Remember in end of 2020, 2021, where everybody was going to refinancing because we had interest rates as low as 0.25 or 0.5%, and there was a huge attraction for real estate because money was essentially free or very, very cheap. Now, this inflated the market. There was a lot of money chasing deals because it was a fabulous store value, and there was growth. As soon as there was inflation, asset prices rise, because the inflation is the increase in prices over time, is measured by a basket of goods. If you want more information, go to StatScan. Anyways, so over the last 2-3 years, we've had a little bit of growth in the economy. We had a lot of growth, mostly because we had a lot of immigration. If you look at the per capita, it actually had a slight decrease, which is never good. The only reason we had GDP growth is because we let a lot of people in the country, which was good for us as real estate investor, because those people coming in, those immigrants, they need housing. So if you were in the residential market, you got to supply apartments to those newly arrived Canadians or permanent residents or immigrants or whatever you'd like. They still needed a dwelling here. So that provided us with opportunities. Now, also from an economic standpoint, you remember the spike in inflation that we had. I think it went up to as high as 7 or 8% back in 2021. I don't have the figures in front of me, but I'll let you do that research as well. Now, the one tool the government has, the one tool the Bank of Canada has to keep inflation in control is interest rate, because the interest rate is sets the cost of money. So when inflation goes up, naturally they need to increase the interest rate to keep things a bit more level. And the way the economic cycle works is that the more you raise the price of money, the less people want to borrow. So the more it decreases demand. And when you decrease demand, you also kind of decrease inflation because less people want to buy stuff. So naturally prices naturally rise less. Now, if you want to go take an economics class, macroeconomics, and go to university, go learn, there's plenty of stuff online, go for it. However, going back to the interest rate rose so fast back in 2023, end of 2022, beginning of 2023, and throughout the year. I think it was the record pace in 30 years. I don't remember exactly the numbers, but it was the fastest we've had in decades. Then it stayed flat at 475, if I recall, for about a year. And then inflation really started to decrease. So naturally, the Bank of Canada decreased rates. So if you recall back in June, on the 5th of June, 2024, we had our first cut, 475 to 450. So 25 basis points. It was starting to send the right signal. Now, July 24th, same thing, 25 basis points. Then the next meeting on September 4th, another 25 basis points. So by that point, we're at 425. And this was just a couple months ago. Now, if you recall, in October 23rd, 50 basis points. Now we're at 375. We're starting to get some breathing room. Things are starting to go a lot better. And then a couple weeks ago, December 11th, Bank of Canada announced another 50 basis points. So now today, as I record this, we're at 375, up from 475 6 months ago. So it's a big decrease that we've had. And obviously, it has a huge impact for us because it's the price of capital. Now, a lot of you have had to renew mortgages. Imagine you bought back in 2024, you were on a 5-year term. This is coming now. I mean, I've been in this situation. I had to renew 2 mortgages. I have another one coming up in the next couple of months. And I just wanted to touch a little bit on that because back in 2021, 2022, I had this conversation with many investors who thought I was crazy because I always said I only take fixed rates. And people told me this is stupid. You don't know what you're doing. You should always go variable. If you look at a 30-year time span, variable always outperforms fixed, which might be true. I don't know. I actually never did the research on a 30-year time period. Except, yes, I invest for the long run, but I invest for a 5-year term every time. And so when rates were very low, I thought it made sense to lock in very low for 5 years because if the rates are very low, I'm not protecting against them going lower. I'm protecting against them going higher. And you know what? I proved correct, at least for my investment thesis. And I remember end of 2020, on one of my very first multifamily, the 5-plex in Lachine, we locked in at 175, fixed 5-year term. And guess what? We still have this now, 175. It's coming due in a couple of months. Well, end of 2025. And so the point I want to make isn't to say like I was right or I was wrong. I followed my investment thesis and I liked predictability. A lot of people to me were influenced by, no, my banker said that I should go variable. Yeah, because it's better for banks because they make more money. But you have to think for you and you need predictability. Now, predictability in some cases could be at 4%, but at least you know exactly what you're paying for 5 years, and you can plan accordingly. You can still make money on a mortgage at 4%. It's just that you need to know how you can optimize the property. You need to know what you're going to be paying for monthly. When there's fluctuations, it's unpredictable and it brings uncertainty. And so I'll leave you make that choice. So as you're going fixed or variable, if you're renewing your mortgage, I'm not going to tell you what to do. You can talk to your banker. You can educate yourself. In our case, we just always chose to go fixed because then whether it's high or low, obviously I'd much rather be low, but I know exactly what I'm getting myself into. Okay. And that's for me. And in our case, it proved good because on this 5-plex in Lachine, over the last couple of years, the rents have increased. We've had some turnover. We did the natural increases from the TAL, and we've actually improved the cash flow significantly. And this is now one of our best performing properties because we locked in rates, a rate at 175. So again, educate yourself, talk to your banker to a certain point, but don't always go with what they tell you. And you got to make a choice that you're comfortable with. It's just that I've spoken to people who bought a 6-plex who were on a variable. It went up and they were squeezed. They had a negative cash flow every month. And that's not why we invest in real estate, because that creates situations where then they can withstand for a couple of months, maybe a couple of years. But at the end, you're in this to make money and not just on the appreciation, also on the cash flow. So plan for the worst and then hope for the best. Now, throughout this year, we also had a significant amount of immigration. And then a couple of months ago, the government finally kind of realized, both at the federal level and the provincial level, that, oh my God, we've put too much pressure on housing. They're never going to say we've had bad policies, but they had policies that didn't support new housing. So the wave of immigration naturally drove prices up, price of rent up, because there's more demand for the same amount of dwellings. So now, instead of helping developers and say, we need to remove the barriers to creating new housing, they just said, we're going to reduce the amount of immigration. Now, if you take a step back, if you look at the birth rate in Canada, so the birth rate is the average number of babies per woman, because men don't make babies, women do. And it's not high enough. For a natural turnover of the population, you just need above 2. So the joke is that you need 2.1, 2.2. I joke that with my wife, we never find where the comma is. So anyways, we had 2 kids. Now, we don't have enough kids in Canada. So in order to have slight population growth, we need immigration. We also need immigration because Canada actually has a good immigration system versus a lot of other countries. And I'm thinking of some places in Europe. And again, this is just my opinion. You can love me or hate me for it. Canada has a good system because we favor educated people in good health that we know are going to contribute to society in the long run. Now, I'm an immigrant here. I will allow myself to have these conversations because I've been through the immigration process. It's not easy. It's selective. You need a lot of patience. And frankly, sometimes it felt extremely hard. Now, we need certain jobs. We need certain type of labor. We need some qualified. We need some unqualified. There is job vacancy in a lot of different industries. And a lot of Quebecers, a lot of Canadians don't want these jobs anymore. So we need to import labor, and that's immigration, whether it's temporarily. As an anecdote, I was driving back and I was near Saint-Eustache, so just north of Quebec, north of Montreal. And there is huge fields over there. And I was behind a school bus on a Saturday. And the first few minutes, it didn't hit me. And then it turned into a field and I slowed down. And that bus was bringing in labor to go pick fruits in the fields. And we forget that a lot of the apples that are picked here, they aren't picked by Quebecers anymore. They're picked by other people that come from elsewhere as temporary labor. And I'm very grateful that they do this because they allow us to keep the price of food fairly low, even though I know it's increased dramatically over the last couple of years. All I want to say here is that we need immigration as a country. Now, can we improve the system? Probably. Can we make better strategic choices in terms of who for how long? Yeah, maybe. But we need this labor. End point. Now, if we need this labor, we need to house them. So it's not a question of reducing immigration. It's a question of increasing the housing supply. How do we do this? The housing supply isn't increased by the government. They don't go and build thousands of units, okay? They say they do, they don't. If somebody has the figures, send them to me. I'd love to dissect them with you. And I think of the city of Montreal, who said under Mrs. Plante, oh yeah, we're going to create thousands of affordable units. If you look at their track record over the last couple of years, it's under 1,000. They didn't hit the multiple thousands like they said they would. Those who create housing are real estate investors like you and me. They're small and medium and large size developers who take a piece of land, who go through a 2 to 3 year process, and they build 5, 10, 100, couple of hundred units on that land. And it's condos, it's rental condos, it's condos for sale. So does it necessarily tailor to the needs that we have right now? Not always. And I agree with you. We need more affordable housing. It's just at least we're adding housing. And never forget the trickle effect, because a lot of people say, oh yeah, but we're just adding, like high-end condos or, medium-end condos. But don't forget the ripple effect where, you add 50 new units mid-market. A lot of the people who are going to move in there are going to be leaving their previous unit, who might be a little bit more affordable, and that creates a spot for somebody else to move. I was going to say move up the food chain. It's not a question of up and down. It's just a question of it has a ripple effect, because when one vacant unit appears on the market, 2 or 3 other people are going to be able to move behind it. And I think that's greatly understated and reminded. So instead of reducing immigration, to me, we should create a lot more policies that make it easier for new housing to be built. If you've been following the show, you know that now I'm almost in my 3rd year of developing a property in Saint-Jérôme. It hasn't been easy. We've had a lot of great news lately, but it can be quite challenging. And the city wants new dwellings. The province wants new dwellings. We have support from local organizations to do it, but the process is so tedious. The cost is crazy. And we think it's high here. Listen to what developers are going through in Ontario. It's absolutely insane. You know that about 1/3 of the cost of developing a new unit actually gets paid to different levels of government and the city. I'll let that sink in, okay? Now in Quebec, it's lesser, but it's still a lot. And so some of the cities now have added, a tax basically on new housing, where when you go to permit, for each door that you add, you need to pay between $2,500 and $5,000 per unit. You do a 100-unit development, I'll let you do the math in terms of how much the price of the new unit has been increased by the city, by the government. And they say, yeah, but developers are adding new units, they need to contribute to the infrastructure. I thought that's what we already pay taxes for. But hey, some cities are more efficient than others out of using their tax dollars and how well they use it. However, we need more immigration. We need to remove some of the barriers to building new houses. Now, there's opportunities for you in this very economy. Right now, interest rates are decreasing. They're going to continue to decrease for a good part of 2025. I don't have a crystal ball, but to me, we're still going to get maybe two or three notches of at least 25 basis points. I think that Canada will want to take rates to about 2.25. Target for inflation is 2. It'll be healthy around 2.25 as an interest rate. We'll see what happens. Now, we're also due for some elections at the federal level in the country. And to me, that will have a big impact in 2025. And let's not forget what's happening down south in the U.S. The newly elected president has mentioned the possibility of to 25% tariff. This could have a big impact on the economy. To me, there's still a lot of talk, and I don't think there'll be much action on it, but it's still a threat that scares a lot of the manufacturing and service industry here, and it totally makes sense because that will have an impact for us. You know, the saying, when the U.S. gets a small cold, in Canada we get a huge cold and a big sneeze. So We'll see what happens. Now, what does that mean for you? You may have a triplex, a sixplex, you have a little bit of money saved and you want to buy a property. I still recommend that you do it because too many people say, oh, the economy is not great, I'm just going to wait to buy real estate. I would recommend the opposite. You buy real estate and then you wait. It's just how you buy it. You have to be smart about it. You could just start with, buying a small multifamily, and I mean 3 to 6 units, improve it a little bit, renovate it a bit, do the rent increases that you can that is permissible from the TAL. Always follow the law. Your tenants are your clients. Always treat them like you would treat them your grandmother. At least that's been our thesis. If you get some natural turnover, that's even better, but you always have to respect the law and you have to respect people, because you may see this as an investment for you, but it's where your tenants live. It's where they make a family. It's where they make memories. And we don't always all have the same financial pressure and desire. On this note, educate yourself. 2025 is around the corner. There is so much information out there, and that's almost the trouble, is that there's so much. You can listen to podcasts, you can listen to books, you can join networking events. You have to educate yourself, okay? Before you go buy a property for a couple $100,000, spend the first couple $1,000s on yourself. It'll be the best investment you make. Now, again, this is just my humble opinion. I just want to remind you of where we've come in 2024. The real estate market is very affected by what happens at the macro and microeconomic level, and you should be mindful of that. One last note. Too many people wait, they talk, they don't get into the action. And when I say get into the action, I don't mean like to be a Duracell little bunny and go do stupid things. It's just take action for yourself, whatever form that comes into. And if for you, it might just be to educate yourself, and that's already a great place to start. So be mindful. If you're going to do it with partners, get to know them well. If you're going to be investing with your partner, your spouse, talk about it a lot, go through it, talk, share your vision. It'll be the best investment you make. On this wonderful note, I wish you a fabulous end of 2024. I hope you've had a good Christmas. I wish you a very good New Year. And most importantly, I want to thank you all for your dedicated listening-ship, I guess. I put a lot of time and energy into the podcast. It's been a wonderful journey, and it always pleases me to meet you at events or get messages on social media or by email, and get some feedback from you. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful time this year. As usual, research your market, make some offers, and I'll talk to you next week. Thank you.